The lecture today will be on partner selection and marriage. Be sure that you're still reading. The assigned reading for this lecture is Chapter 6, and it's on selecting a partner. It's posted on Blackboard, where these online lectures are posted, as well as the PowerPoints, slides, and eventually study guide questions will be posted. So the lecture today is actually going to have several videos that you'll have to look up externally. I tried to embed them so you could watch them as part of this, but that didn't exactly work out. So I will have the title and pretty much the information you need to look up those videos posted on here, so you can pause and search for them. I'll also post the links on Blackboard along with where you can get to this with the title, so you could go to Blackboard and click on them that way. But I'll be a little bit more explicit too when we get to those sections. And again, you can email me if you have any questions or can't find one of the videos or have any questions about anything. So like we typically do, we love asking children about their opinions on things. So Gary, age 7, wrote that it isn't always just how you look. Look at me. I'm handsome like anything, and I haven't got anybody to marry me yet. So clearly from his perspective, being handsome or attractive, is clearly pretty important for finding a marital partner. So what's on the agenda for today? We'll talk about finding a relationship partner. We'll talk about intercultural and racial dating or marriage. We'll talk about arranged versus love matches. And finally, we'll talk about marital satisfaction. Like has happened in the past, this might end up being several sections. I tried to break it up so you guys don't have to watch like a whole hour and 15-minute video. Try to break them up into about 15 to 20-minute segments. But these might be a little shorter than an hour and 15 minutes, but maybe not when you add in all the extra video clips. So the first video clip is actually supported through UNCH's library systems. It's called Love, Lust, and Marriage, Why We Stay and Why We Stray. And there's several sections, so I just want you to watch the first 3 sections. The first one is Blueprints for Future Mates. How People Choose Mates is the second one, and Courting Rituals is the third. So I posted this link on here so you could see it, but I think it will be really hard for you to copy it from there, have to retype it. So there should be somewhere on Blackboard where you can just click on the link or at least copy it and paste it into your URL. If you get real fancy, you can go to the UNCH Library's main page and click on Databases, and then it'll give you several letters that you can search by. And if you go to the F, this database that has this video is actually Films on Demand. And once you get to that page, you can actually search for this video too. If you want to try to make things a little more challenging for yourself, you can do that. But so again, just watch the first 3 sections. It's just a nice introduction to this topic. So I probably am not gonna keep this going. I'll just pause it and then come back once you've watched it. There's another video clip that I want you to watch. It kind of expands on the courting rituals section that you watched in the first video. I think it's really interesting, these topics and these videos, so I hope you're liking them. But this one's on YouTube, so you can either search by the video title, which is The Science of Sex Appeal, Flirting to Find a Mate, or you can type in that web page URL, or, hopefully you can find on Blackboard where I have this video link that you can either copy and paste or click on. Hopefully one of those will work. So this is, again, a little bit of an evolutionary perspective on sex appeal and flirting, and kind of partner selection. It also talks about some gender differences, which are really interesting. And again, try to get the general ideas from this video clip, as this could be included in test material. But what's nice is you'll have these to go back and review before the exam as well. So again, just pause this video, go watch the clip, and then come back. So in terms of finding a relationship partner, this is kind of just an overview slide, so I can give you a chance to see what I'll be talking about. First, we'll be talking about freedom versus constraint, and this includes things like endogamy versus exogamy, the marriage squeeze, and the marriage gradient. And I'll also be talking about some personal qualities that are influence finding a relationship partner. So first, freedom versus constraint. There are considerable social pressures that shape our choices. So you may think that you can have the choice of any partner you want, but there actually are definitely some constraints on who you may choose as a partner. So culture and society greatly restrict and influence the choices we make in regards to who we choose to date and who we choose to marry. So for example, and this is something we've sort of talked about in previous lectures, one way that we might be socially or culturally controlled is something like such states that recognize or don't same-sex marriages, or the extent to which society or your family approves of your relationship partner. So another example, think about geographical location. So I guess if you're dating online, you have access to a wider variety of partners. But if you're not interested in long-distance relationships, for example, you may be constrained to partners that are geographically close to you or proximal. So again, you can see how there's factors that influence who we can actually choose as relationship partners. Later on in this section, we'll also talk about some interracial or cultural aspects of dating and mate selection, and actually how uncommon it is. And although this is changing, so there are a lot more multiracial or interracial marriages that are occurring than in the past. But this is also another example of how social pressures can shape our choices about relationship partners. So endogamy versus exogamy. These are two forms of cultural pressure that function in mate selection. So this is actually, these two things define sort of who our eligible partners are. So endogamy, and again your book talks about both of these as well. So endogamy include guidelines for marriage within a particular group. So it may be the cultural expectation to select a partner within your own social group. And this means that the pool of potential mates is refined by the practice of choosing a mate within one's group. And your group can actually mean several things. It can be your social class, your ethnicity, your religion, your age group. So, for example, marrying someone within your group could be, for example, Catholics choosing to marry each other, or people of approximately similar ages choosing to marry each other. Prior to 1967, there were laws in many U.S. states prohibiting interracial marriage. And so again, endogamy could also be, for example, marrying within your racial group or ethnic group. Interracial marriage actually became fully legal in all U.S. states since the 1967 Supreme Court decision deemed that these laws against interracial marriage were unconstitutional. And that was actually for all the states. Some states had chosen to legalize interracial marriage at much earlier dates, some even as early as 40 years ago or prior. And today, although it is not illegal to marry outside of your race, people usually choose mates from groups who share similar values, beliefs, and backgrounds. And so again, we'll talk about a little bit of interracial and interethnic dating and marriage later, and I'll give you some figures as like percents of marriages that occur. Exogamy are kind of guidelines about marrying outside one's kin group. And so the most common exogamous norms in the U.S. are those that prohibit us from dating and marrying someone who is a family member. So again, you can't marry your close blood relatives. I think in some states, not all, there's laws about against marrying your first cousin. But I think in all states in the United States, you can't marry like a sibling, blood-related sibling, or parent. And this incest taboo is actually pretty universal. And this means that most societies do not approve of it and actually prohibit incest. Many state marriage licenses, so when you actually go to get married, you have to get a license. But these actually require that you verify and prove that you are not blood related to your fiance. And from a biological standpoint, incestual relationships can actually cause genetic problems because it can allow for recessive traits to occur or to show up in your phenotype. And that can be quite problematic from a genetic standpoint as well. So the marriage squeeze. In the marriage squeeze, this is a situation whereby one sex has a more limited pool of eligibles than the other does. That is, there's a gender imbalance in unmarried available males and females. So since World War II, there's actually been a greater number of women than men who are eligible for marriage. In the 1990s, however, the marriage squeeze reversed itself such that never married men outnumbered never married women. When there are more available men than women, monogamy, or again, being married to only one person at a time, or an exclusive relationship with one person, and marriage are more likely. However, when there are more women available than men have more choices, and therefore monogamy is less likely. So you can also sort of think about this from a biological or evolutionary perspective, or how that might explain this. So again, when there's a lot of potential women available and fewer men, um, women are competing for men's attention, and because from an evolutionary standpoint, um, which is about procreation and spreading your genes, men can do that with much more women because the women are available. However, when there's a fewer number of women and a large majority of men, women get to be more selective in that situation. And because of the investment it takes for women to actually raise a child, men are competing against each other for the women, and that actually tends to lead to more monogamous relationships. And the marriage gradient. So this is a tendency for husbands to be more advanced than their wives with regard to age, education, and occupational success. And this is another factor that affects the availability of eligible mates. In most cultures, informal norms encourage women to marry men of equal or higher status, and this can mean things like men being older, having higher incomes, having better jobs, or more education. Men, on the other hand, tend to marry women of equal or lower status. So because women marry upward and men marry downward, men at the top have a much larger field of eligibles than do men at the bottom. However, the reverse is true for women. So those at the top have a very small pool of eligibles, whereas those women at the bottom have a much wider range of men from whom to choose. And this same trend is shown in dating patterns as well as marriage patterns. And so again, this is a problematic situation for higher status women and lower status men, because this restricts the partners that are available to them. More recently, in a 2010 research update, this trend has shifted, and that higher status men and women are viewed as attractive partners and are more likely to marry or date and are more likely to actually stay married and have more successful marriages than those with lower levels of education. The past several decades have ushered in a widening divide between low-educated and high-educated individuals. The lower educated tend to experience lower rates of marriage, higher rates of cohabitation and single parenthood, and for those who do marry, higher rates of divorce. Individuals with higher education do marry a little later than the national average, but their marriages are less likely to end in divorce. And so it's important for you guys to know kind of what these discrepancies are between highly educated and lower educated people. The marriage gradient, I think, is also, you can see it applying in physical attractiveness too. So this video clip I want you guys to watch talks a little bit about the marriage gradient. It doesn't refer to it specifically, but it's sort of an example about what women find attractive and how status, essentially for higher income or a lucrative job or fancy car, can actually affect their perceptions of a man's physical attractiveness and his desirability as a partner. So this is similar to what we talked about, with the marriage gradient for women trying to marry higher status men or partner with higher status men. So again, that link is right here. I'll also have it posted on Blackboard under this title, or you can just search YouTube for this, and then we'll start part 2 talking about the personal qualities of potential partners.